Welcome to the Sons of Mjolnir podcast.
The Sons of... what?
This isn't your Sons of Macaroni, yeah!
The Sons of Mjolnir?
This is Sons of Mjolnir, yeah, yeah!
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sons of Mjolnir. As always, I am your host, Fat Thor, and today we are joined by a very special guest. You may know him from such titles as Road of Bones, Breath of Shadows, Sea of Sorrows, and the most recent Drive Like Hell, and upcoming HeartPiercer from Dark Horse, among some other titles. We are joined once again by friend of the show, Rich Douek. Rich, how you doing, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to have you back. So we had Rich on a good while ago. We were just talking about this good couple months ago, right before Drive Like Hell hit the shelves with your good buddy Alex Cormack. And I mean, I just can't say enough good things about both of you. You guys are so nice, so cool. It was such a fun time last time. For everyone listening and watching this, if you want to hear more about Rich's backstory, how he got into comics, and a little bit about Drive Like Hell, go check out that episode. But for today, we're here to talk about a whole new slew of books that you got cooking up, and I'm super excited for. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about Drive Like Hell, because like I just mentioned, last time we talked right before the first issue hit, so we couldn't really talk about spoilers and all that kind of great stuff. But now the run has come to an end, so I got to ask you just first off, how does it feel to have that story finished off and have the reception from the fans? Because I know that I loved it, and I saw a lot of people singing its praises as well.
Yeah, no, it felt really good. Like I said, when I think like a really common kind of like piece of advice you get in comics is when you're writing or creating is write the comics that you want to see, and Drive Like Hell is like 100% the comic I want to see. It's got like everything I love in it, like it's sort of like a love letter to old like 70s car chase movies that and like supernatural stuff. And I just had like such a blast writing it, and I know Alex had a blast drawing it. So seeing that the enthusiasm that we put into it translated to fans being really enthusiastic about it was an amazing feeling. And like every opportunity that I've had to kind of see people in person, where if I did a couple of signings that people came out to, and everyone was just like super supportive and super hyped for it. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and like I said, I loved it. And I want to ask you too. So again, we talked right when the first issue dropped, so we didn't really get into some of the nuances of the book. But I wanted to ask you about the two main characters, Bobby Ray and Dahlia, because I really loved their kind of dynamic throughout the series, and the kind of progression that we saw with that dynamic with just only 4 issues. So could you just talk a little bit about the kind of character progression that you wanted these two to go on in these 4 issues? And was it a challenge to hit those beats in a limited number of issues like that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of challenging because, I obviously given the choice, like, we would have like kind of strung out the story for like a bit longer, and had like, there was a lot of kind of like, I think the thing with like Drive Like Hell is it was just basically like a big like chase throughout, and we didn't really want to have the pace let up much at any point, so it did kind of lend itself really well to like every issue being like covering a lot of ground, both literally and figuratively. But it would have been nice to like have like maybe an issue or two extra to like just elaborate on certain things more. But I think like what I was trying to do with Bobby and Dahlia was they're really kind of like almost like a Bonnie and Clyde kind of pair,
Yeah.
like, partners in crime. And I think at the very beginning, probably, and I think you get a little bit of like kind of their backstory in issue 3. Like two people who like are probably not really good for each other, you know, in
Yeah.
the run. Maybe like kind of encouraging bad tendencies with each other. But I think what I wanted to get across with them was that there was like a bond there, and the fact, and even the fact that they're very different in a lot of ways, they're also very similar in terms of like what they want and like
Mhm.
what they really hold dear and what's important to them, you know. And I think Bobby and Dahlia for me are like both a pair of like outlaws, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like they're not like they're not bad people. They're
Hmm.
just not people that are going to work inside the system uh to uh to get the things that they want. Like they're not going to like, you know, work a 9 to 5. They're not going to settle down and be quiet. And I think that was kind of the where everything was what everything was building to at the end was that they're outside the system. They're outside, like they're not going to do what anyone tells them to do, whether that's the law, whether that's a boss, or whether that's God and the devil and all the forces of heaven and hell. You know, they're not going to, you know, turn over the car or the horn just because that's what they're supposed to do. They're not gonna um you know, again, like they're not trying to get anybody hurt,
Hmm.
but they're not going to like do the right thing just because somebody tells them, you know, it's the right thing. It's like they're going to do what they believe. And I think that, you know, was summed up pretty well in the last panel as they're driving away, giving the
Hmm.
bird to you know, not to spoil it for anybody,
Yeah.
you know, like just basically like flipping off like all these great and powerful forces that are trying to, you know, use them to their own ends.
And I love that too. And I think you absolutely nailed the kind of lovable outlaw angle because there wasn't, like you said, they're not necessarily good people, but I wouldn't say they're bad people either. And at least for me, I never got that sense of like, these are bad people, right? And especially with Bobby Ray, I always really just love stories of like, how do I say, like the mundane person or like the screw up
Mhm.
kind of guy has an opportunity to like make really, you know, big changes into something and being involved in something like that. And like I said, someone who you typically would write off. So I really love that aspect to his character and how that played out through the 4 issues. And like you just mentioned, the last scene, which I don't want to spoil for people, but kind of perfectly encapsulates all of that as him as a character. So I really love that. And I also want to ask, I feel like this kind of lovable outlaw, or like you were talking about, kind of working outside the fringes, I feel like that applies to all the characters, including the kind of supernatural beings that we see, in particular with Gabriel. And I know I'm going to butcher saying this name, Malvaricus.
Marcus, yeah,
Malvaricus. Yeah, there.
well, he goes by Rourke sometimes, and
Yeah.
that's a lot easier to
Or
pronounce. But
Rourke. Yeah.
yeah, they're both like in their own way, like working outside the systems that they're a
Hmm.
part of too. You know, it's just that they all, you know, yeah, like they have their own kind of like little motives, and they
Hmm.
aren't going to let anybody on heaven or earth get in the way of that. You
Yeah.
know.
And I love how you made also, again, not to spoil too much of the story, but the I don't know, if this is a little too spoilery, let me know and I'll cut this out. But like the angels and the quote unquote who are supposed to be good guys, they're not that like when we meet up with Gabriel, he's not like that cool of a dude, right? So I loved
Yeah,
how
no,
you were playing with, again, that kind of ambiguity with all of the characters, not just our main ones. Was that a kind of conscious decision when you sat down with this to make there's not necessarily a good guy? Or I mean, I guess you could say like there definitely is a bad guy, but you get what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I think like, you know, that's something I try to do, not just in Drive Like Hell, but I think in all my stories, um, because I think that's something that I really take from real life is that, it's very, very rare to have somebody who's all good or all bad. Like we're all just sort of a mix of both, and we have good days and we have bad days, and we have the best, most noble thing we ever did, and we all have a terrible thing that we've done that we feel horrible, we
Mhm.
regret. I mean, it's probably not doesn't go to like a criminal thing in like anybody's case, in
Yeah.
everybody's case, but it might just be something in your past that like, you really like, maybe you regret the way a relationship ended, or or something like that. But the point is that like uh, it's just sort of, I think it's just the way I approach character is really trying to show the whole picture of a person and not have everybody be kind of like cookie cutter black and white,
Hmm.
because I don't think that ever really kind of like rings true to me.
Yeah.
There's sort of, you know, there's that idea that like no, there's no like bad guy who like sees themselves as the bad guy. They always think they're the
Hmm.
good guy, you
Yeah.
know. And I think kind of like the reverse of that is that, you know, most good people, most good guys, if they're, have a little bit of like humility and a little bit of self-awareness, don't think that they're like perfect good guys either,
Hmm.
or so I think there's just like a good, I don't like writing people who are like characters who are like, all one or all the other. Like I think, you know, quote unquote bad guys have their motives for being bad that might start out good, and it's just sort of like the way that it comes bad, and then you have like good guys who want to do good and wind up, going about it like the wrong way or something. So
Hmm.
it's really just what I try to do is just not have anybody be like one note, like
Yeah.
just, every character, whether it's, the main character or the main antagonist or whatever. I think like the way to the way I try to build them is as like complex people.
Yeah, and I think that really rings true to all of your work and really creates interesting characters that you can really get involved with because like you said it makes it feel more real. And it reminds me of one of my other favorite nerd franchises is Game of Thrones, and I think
Mhm.
that's very one of the things that I really love about it is like you were saying, I would argue there's really no character in that series or books that is necessarily like all good or all bad.
Mhm.
Even the people who are supposed to be heroes do some bad things. And I think, and I just really love that as a character device and a way to tell stories. I think it makes everything more interesting. But speaking of telling stories, last thing I got about Drive Like Hell that I just had to ask you about, because unfortunately we don't have Alex here like we did last time. But once again, shout out to Alex Cormack, amazing art in this book. And I got to ask, now that I've read the whole thing and I've digested it all, I mean, man, his artwork is just out of this world. And I was curious, you mentioned this earlier about how a lot of the book, I mean, most of the book takes place in the car,
Mhm.
and almost every single issue there's a huge car chase, like great, like I'm thinking of issue 4. I want to say it's like page 4 or 5, just huge spread of like a
Yeah.
car on fire, and you got the little panels like all. So when you're scripting that, and we talked a little bit about this before with your works such as like Breath of Shadows and Sea of Sorrows, how a lot of times you give Alex kind of creative freedom with the kind of gore stuff like that. With the car chase stuff, was it a kind of similar thing between you and Alex? Did you just kind of, hey, huge car, double page spread of a car chase, or were you kind of a little bit more meticulous of how you wanted the specific kind of scenes to look?
Well, I think, um, one of the things, and it's really funny because I know there was like some like Twitter drama recently about like, writers like overwriting or underwriting their scripts and
Oh
the
yeah.
artists and things like that. So it's kind of relevant. But I've worked with Drive Like Hell is the fourth book I've worked with Alex on. So we do have like a little bit of kind of like a shorthand. Like I don't I really the thing is with Alex is that I trust him to make great creative choices. So I don't really need to or want to like micromanage him. Like I want to kind of give him the space to be great
Hmm.
and to bring his own like interpretation to it, especially with something as challenging as like a car chase in a comic, because that car chases in comics are really hard because I mean, if you think about it, like, if you draw a car, it's like you just got like a static image of a car. Like,
Hmm.
is it moving? Is it not moving? Like if you draw like a parked car and you draw a moving car, it's essentially the same image. So it's a lot of it is like kind of like what's going on around it. Are you putting in speed lines? I think one of the tricks Alex used is that when the cars are like really going like going at it, like swerving and like, knocking each other around, they're like if you look closely, like their wheels are like never on the ground.
Hmm.
And I think he said that that's like something he picked up from Sin City, actually, reading that.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it just gives it a lot of like extra motion and
Hmm.
things like that. So when I script stuff, like what I really try to do is just I ask myself like what's important about this panel? Why is this panel here? So um for the for that scene you're talking about, it's like they're basically like kind of trapped in a quarry and all the, demonic cars and motorcycles and are coming after them, and it's supposed to be this like big demolition derby. So that was like kind of like the main panel description where I was just, if I'm remembering correctly, I was like, okay, Alex, like here's the setup. Like we're kind of in this like bowl. It's going to be like a big demolition derby. The car, Bobby, Ray, and Dahlia, their car is like, like on fire, smashing around. Like all the other cars are trying to get them. So what I think we should do is have that big spread showing it, and let's highlight a few different moments like throughout that really kind of get across this idea of like that everything's like crashing all over the place. And then it's like a collaborative thing because Alex doesn't just like kind of throw a finished page at me. Like he'll show me stuff like in progress. So like
Yeah.
he'll be like, well, what about this? And I'll be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like um I forget what it was. I think there was one spread, I think, where like we've got like a big image of the car and some inset panels, and like there's like some overlap, and he showed me like what he was working on. He was like, I kind of feel like uh could use like a little something. And I was like, well, what if it's like kind of crashing through the panels and you actually kind of like warp the panel borders so it looks like the car is like actually like smashing through them in
Hmm.
a couple of places, and he really liked that. And then the next, I wish I could remember what page it's on, but it's definitely an issue 4. But just like stuff like that. And I think that's part of the reason why we work so well together is that we there's just really that kind of like that trust there, that like we're neither one of us really like lets our ego take over, like and say like it has to be this way or it has to be that way. Like
Hmm.
Alex is really open to whatever I ask him to script, and I feel um like that I'm have to like reciprocate, and I want to reciprocate and
Hmm.
be very open to like what he brings to the table like as an artist, you know
Yeah.
uh and
Well, I
then
mean,
yeah, and then then it becomes like our book and not like my book that Alex drew, you know what I mean?
mhm.
It's like, and I think that's like a pretty important distinction.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are crushing it. And we talked last time about like your kind of collaborative process, exactly what you're talking about,
Mhm.
trusting each other and having that rapport. And I think that's just so important, especially when you're doing multiple books together. And I always think of it like playing in a band. Like, I don't know if you've
Mhm.
ever, play an instrument or been in a band, but, when you're playing with other people, there's some kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. You'll know what I'm talking about. Like, there's some kind of creative juice in the air where it's like you can almost anticipate the other person's next move, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like you and Alex have that kind of, again, that cosmic kind of creative connection going, and it just translates so well to the page. And we got more to talk about, but I talking about it made me think of one more question before we get off
Sure,
Drive
yeah.
Like Hell.
We got
But
time. We got time.
another thing I really loved, and I felt like it was I don't want to say a bold choice, but just not one that I expected, was, again, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but the kind of big fight of the series, right? That we get to in issue 4 between our two kind of big supernatural entities, right?
Mhm.
You ended off very ambiguous and like very much like it's starting off, and then we kind of, the ending of the book in its entirety, sorry, is ambiguous in itself, but also kind of what happens with these characters. So I'm just curious, what was the decision on going that route? Because I really loved that, and I love stories that kind of leave me not questioning, but just like thinking of like, oh, what happened to these people? What happened next? Was that like, again, what was the decision making of ending it on that kind of note?
Yeah, well, I mean, because I think what I was trying to get across with that was that, like, so you got like a demon and you got an angel, and they're fighting, and they've been fighting probably for, millions of years, and are going to be fighting for millions of years, and they're tired of it, and everybody's tired of it, like that's the thing, is that Bobby, Ray, and Dahlia don't really give a fuck about what they're fighting about. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like because in a sense they kind of know that, like, it doesn't matter who wins, it doesn't matter who loses, because it's like if one side was like so much better, like their lives would be better. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So I think like kind of where I'm coming from with that, like in like just in my own life, is that it's like, good things happen, bad things happen, you can, not to like take away from anybody like what they feel like religiously, but it's like, you pray, and you could pray, and sometimes your prayers will be answered and sometimes they won't.
Mhm.
And that's just how life is. And in the book, I think the reason I wanted to end it like that was because like that big important fight is not really as important as you would think. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, like there are these like titanic forces like clashing, but at the end of the day, Bobby, Ray, and Dahlia, they're just two people, and they're not going to
Yeah.
like swing things one way or the other. And rather than picking a side, they're picking a third side, which is themselves. You know what I mean? Like they're
Mhm.
picking like what's right for them. Like Bobby Ray, at the end of the day, he's just a guy who loves to drive.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
I
And
love
that
it.
and that's what he's going to do, whether no matter what hell says, no matter what heaven says, no matter what anyone says. It's like, and that I think that's really what I was trying to get at with that, was that these like forces that seem so important and so, um seem so like powerful, it's like they don't have like an impact on like your day-to-day life. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's like, and the choice you have is to like, are you going to like drive yourself crazy with, trying to like affect this like huge thing, or are you going to like do what's right for you,
Mhm.
like it's weird because I like I did a lot of like the writing and thinking of Drive Like Hell like during the pandemic,
Mhm.
and I think one of the things that got me through the pandemic was like got me through it sane, I should say, was like because like back then, like if you would like look at the news, it's like you could really like drive yourself crazy with like,
Mhm.
okay, well, you got to wear a mask. Oh, now you don't really need to wear a mask. Oh, you have to like disinfect your groceries with bleach. Oh no, you don't really need to do that. Like there's all this stuff coming at you and all this like really scary stuff about like, hospitals are going to get overwhelmed or like this is going to happen or that could happen. It could mutate. And like, and if all you looked at was like the news, like I know like I was getting kind of like freaked out by it.
Mhm.
And one day I just sort of like realized I was like, well, like I'm here. I feel okay today. Like right now, I feel okay.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like I'm doing my job from home and my family's okay. Like we're all healthy. Um, it's weird, but it's like if I'm okay today, if I'm okay like right now, then I'm okay. And I
Mhm.
don't like worry about all this other big stuff going on that I can't affect anyway, because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor. So it really doesn't matter how I feel about what what kind of job the government's doing or what kind of job any
Mhm.
it's like because I can't really change it like in the moment. So like I was just like, let me just be present here and think about like, am I okay? And like, what do I want? And how am I doing today? And what am I going to do today? And that's kind of how I got through it. And I think that weirdly enough kind of like wound up on the page
Mhm.
with like, with Bobby Ray and Dahlia being like, well, you know, doesn't really matter like what anybody wants out of us. It's like we're gonna go for what we want to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, you got to live your life,
Yeah.
for yourself, and you got to do what you can, every day is, I mean, every day is a new step, and you just got to do what you can. So I
Yeah.
mean, beautifully said, man. I really love that. And again, that's one of the reasons I love the way in which you ended off the book, because that's exactly kind of what I took away. And that's why I asked about,
Oh,
Bobby
great.
Ray and all that, because like I
Yeah.
said, he's a right, like, I mean, again, you said it perfectly. He loves to drive, and that's what he's going to do. So it's like, I can't affect this, big stuff going on, so I'm going to do what I can, and that's to drive like hell, if you would. But man,
Yeah.
I just love this book. I gotta ask, do we got a trade coming of it soon, hopefully?
Yeah, we do. It's gonna come out towards the end of the year. I don't think we have like an exact date yet.
Mhm.
It might be like um it might be on Amazon or something, but I know it's like it should be, if it's not already available to pre-order, it should be available really soon. But
Beautiful.
yeah, definitely coming out. Um, and very excited to get it out there, and
Beautiful.
also to get it myself and pop it on my bookshelf. So
Yeah, I need it myself because I got all the
yeah,
singles, but I need it just on the shelf, like ready to
yeah.
go whenever I want it. So everyone watching and listening out to this, be sure to keep an eye out for that. That will be coming out soon. But let's move on a little bit to some of your newer stuff. Something I got to ask you about really quickly that I'm not very knowledgeable about, but I was super hyped to see your name on it. But you got to write Cyborg Spider-Man recently in
Yeah.
Edge of Spider-Verse. So unfortunately, this my comic shop had an issue with their shipments the last week, so I wasn't able to pick this one up. But I just wanted to ask you, like, one, what was it like to see your name on a Spider-Man book? And two, what was it like writing Cyborg Spider-Man? Again, this is a character I'm not very knowledgeable about, so enlighten
Sure,
me a
sure.
little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, first of all, it was amazing. No pun intended, seeing my name on the Spider-Man book.
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man, it's he's definitely like in my kind of like top five or like definitely like one of the superheroes that I most like identified with, like
Mhm.
getting into superheroes. I mean, like, I grew up in Queens too. I actually lived in Forest Hills, but
Yeah.
aside from all that, like I think what really resonated with me always was just, he's like a superhero, but he's still kind of an underdog.
Mhm.
So I've always loved the character. So being able to write any kind of version of him was like really special. Um, but Cyborg Spider-Man was like kind of a one-off character that Eric Larson created in the 90s,
Mhm.
back when cyborg limbs and lots of pouches
Say
and things like
pouches,
that
baby, pouches all day.
were very much in fashion. And he was part of it was just Spider-Man. The story was called I think it was like Revenge or Return of the Sinister Six.
Hmm.
And basically like Spidey got ambushed by the Sinister Six and got injured and wound up being taken to this lab where he got these cybernetic implants to like kind of let him fight crime like while he was healing and stuff. And then I think he goes on and teams up with Deathlock and they beat the Sinister Six and all well and good. Um, but what we were doing in our story was it was like I think like after that Sinister Six story, like he was all healed up and he got rid of the cybernetics. But we were like, well, what if he kept them?
Hmm.
What if like he just sort of stayed a cyborg? And the idea I had was that like, well, maybe um like if he's like a cyborg and he's becoming that much better at crime fighting, like, villains can become cyborgs too. So
Hmm.
started out with like him chasing like the Hobgoblin, and then he finds out the Hobgoblin has his own cybernetic upgrades, and then he winds up running into this cybernetic version of the Sinister Six,
Ooh.
which was really cool. Like I got to think up like alternate names for like all of them. And even though it was only like I think like an 8-page story, like still again like tried to like put a little storyline behind them. So like instead of Sandman, it's like Silicone Man, and he's made up of like
Uh,
little nanites. Um, there was like Electro was just like the living circuit. So he's like a guy in like
mhm.
a suit, and Dr. Octopus is Dr. Octoplex, where it's just like a head with like, a whole bunch of tentacles.
Oh,
So it's
hell
just
yeah.
yeah, there's just like a lot of like really fun stuff. And I like when I got the assignment, what Marvel was asking for was like, this was like a really fun character from the 90s, and we just want you to have fun with it. So
Hmm.
so that's what I did. I put a lot of like kind of callbacks to that era in terms of like, um again, like all like the cybernetic stuff, and
Hmm.
like read the original story, and the lab that created him and stuff. And one really fun thing was like I don't know why, but I was just thinking of the 90s and remembering like anyone who used like Microsoft Word or Office 97 remembers that little clippy,
Hmm.
a little clip digital assistant. So I decided to give Spidey his own one called Webby. That's
Oh.
like it's kind of like the operating system for his cybernetics.
Hmm.
And it's like, really annoying him like throughout the whole story. Like it's like, oh, it looks like you're fighting Hobgoblin. Do you want the suggestions on how to punch him? Because that was like it would always be like, do you want some suggestions on like what to write or like things like that?
Yep.
So I
Yep,
just
I
thought it
remember
was,
that well. I love that.
yeah.
And I mean, a cybernetic Spider-Man, I couldn't think of a more perfect version of Spider-Man for you to write because I mean, that just like fits your boxes all so well. I can't wait to check that out. That sounds so much fun. And so is there going to be any more Edge of the Spider-Verse for you, or was it just the one shot, the 8 pages?
Yeah, I mean, as of now, it's just the one, but like if you happen to read it and you liked it, there's like a letters column you can write in and let Marvel know that you dug it, and
Yep,
maybe the story
everyone
should more work. I
bombard
don't know.
Marvel. Everyone bombard Marvel's inbox right now because we need more. I'm picking it up right when we get off here today because I got to pick up some other
Oh,
issues.
awesome.
So I'm definitely grabbing it. Again, if you're watching and listening, be sure to go grab Edge of the Spider-Verse #2 and check out Rich's story with Cyborg Spider-Man. But Rich, we gotta move on a little bit because I am super excited and super fascinated with another one of your new titles coming from Dark Horse, and that is going to be HeartPiercer. So the synopsis on this one, it says Atala, which I hope I'm saying that right, thought she was saving the world, but hunting the great beast wound up dooming it. Betrayed by her lord and left for dead, she awakes in a dark world overrun by nightmares with a single mission on her mind: revenge. And ooh, that sounds so juicy. I love it. And I'm super excited. So we were just talking, I mentioned very quickly Game of Thrones, right? And
Mhm.
so this is definitely like a dark fantasy sort of world that you're building
Yeah.
here. And I'm curious, at least for me, I feel like fantasy kind of sometimes falls into two camps. And I kind of describe it as your Game of Thrones, which, like we were just talking about, in my opinion, is very much more character driven and a lot more about like the characters and how they interact with the world. And then you have the more like Lord of the Rings side of things where it's very world building, very deep with lore and mythology. So with Heartpiercer, what where on that line were you kind of trying to hit? Is this obviously you're creating this kind of fantasy world, but what were you kind of more were you more focused on the world in which these characters live or the characters themselves?
Well, I think, like everything, it's like a spectrum, like you've got kind of like two poles, and then there's like stuff that falls in between. And I think it definitely falls in between, but again, like I I think for me, like all the world building stuff is like important, and I like to get that in there as much as I can. But for me, like stories are really like about characters.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the reason I wanted to write Heartpiercer was really just to explore these characters, and the idea of a character who um working really hard for a cause that she believed was right, turning out to be exactly the opposite of what she thought she was doing. Um and that's really like what the story is about. I mean, it is about like her waking up in this world and moving through it, but it's also about her coming to terms you know with the fact that she's a big part of the reason why the world is like that, you
Mm-hmm.
know um and is she able to kind of forgive herself and move on from that and turn a new page, or is she going to um wind up consumed by the guilt? Is it
Yeah.
something that the people that she meets in this world is it something that she'll be able to be forgiven for, or are they going to hold it against her? So I think that's a lot of like what we're exploring there.
I love that. And then with the world too, like we're talking about this fantasy stuff, is this kind of I don't want to say typical, but is this your sort of fantasy like I don't know, like goblins and trolls and stuff like that, or is this a completely original world that you've created? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little more, I'd call it like maybe like gothic fantasy, like a little
Mm-hmm.
more like uh Castlevania, or
Okay.
or Van Helsing or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, rather
Ooh,
than or like
like Dungeons and
Grimm's
Dragons.
fairy tales, like more than like Dungeons and Dragons. So like
Okay.
you basically like you've basically got this world where fairly typical kind of like medieval kingdoms and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And there were these like magical beasts. The unicorn was one of them. There was also a wolf and a bunch of other ones. And Italo was part of this order of knights that were basically like hunters, and they were like supposed to be hunting these beasts. What she didn't know was that these beasts were actually like guardians, and they were like kind of protecting humanity from worse things like vampires and werewolves and dragons,
Ooh,
giants,
yes, let's
like
go.
that. So when she finally accomplishes her mission and kills the last one, the unicorn, she's basically like opened the door for all these things that were hiding in the shadows to kind of come back and surge all over the world. So in like the current part of the story, after she reawakens, it's like the world is like overrun by things like werewolves and vampires and all kinds of monsters. And what we're dealing with in this first arc is kind of she comes across this village that is embroiled in a conflict with a tribe of werewolves, and she's you know she decides to like try to help them out. But if we're lucky enough to be able to do like future arcs, like Gavin and I want to like explore her going up like against like all kinds of different monsters, like like in its like perfect form, it would be like an ongoing where like every issue is like, like a different monster or something like that. But
Hell yeah.
like what we're going to try to do is um you know find like a new setting in like volume 2, like maybe like another town she goes to, or things like that, and just sort of like do it that way, like, or we'll just do these kind of like self-contained arcs where she goes and encounters like different types of like supernatural monsters, all while trying to on the road to revenge towards her like former master who betrayed her.
Ooh, I love that. I love that so much. And it's ticking all the rich boxes I'm hearing. We got some mystery, we got some cool ass monsters. Sounds like we're gonna have some awesome fight sequences in there. I'm super excited. I was gonna ask you what kind of monsters, but I mean, you already kind of went through. We got vampires, werewolves. I mean, that just sounds so cool. So you're saying is so right now, is it up in the air kind of how long this is going to go, or do you guys have a set number of issues?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be 4 issues to start with,
Okay.
and you know, uh, it's always like kind of like a delicate tightrope as to like whether Dark Horse will say yes to more or not, or it might be like a little while before there's like more. But I think hopefully if it resonates with people and a bunch of people pick it up, they'll have less reasons to say no. So,
Yeah.
like, and it's a sort of thing, like, I think Gavin and I can kind of like keep it going for as long as people want it to be going. So, like, we're already starting to talk about like a second arc that we'll pitch, and it might be kind of like almost like a Hellboy model where, like, it's like, okay, well, like, this is the first arc, this is this adventure, and then the next one will, might take a little while for us to put it together, but then that'll come out, and like we'll just have like sort of like these different self-contained arcs that all kind of like build up to something more.
That sounds so exciting, dude. I cannot wait for that. I can't wait to check it out. If you're listening and watching this, please go out and support HeartPiercer from Dark Horse. And again, I mean, we have so we got Marvel on our email list, and then we got Dark Horse on the email list as well. So email Marvel and Dark Horse, tell them we need more Rich. We need Rich, baby. So speaking of monsters and big monster fights and all that, your other book you got coming is something that I'm super interested in, and that's Mechagodzilla. And I mean,
Yeah,
Godzilla's everywhere right now. The
yeah.
MonsterVerse is live and well. I don't know if you caught what is it called? Like something MonsterVerse on Hulu, the newest show, or Monarch. That's what it is.
Monarch, yeah.
Monarch. Oh, that show is so good. And I've unfortunately haven't caught Kong versus Godzilla, the newest one.
Yeah, I haven't caught it either, but Godzilla -1 was like off the
That
hook. So,
dude, that's I was just gonna say that's
yeah.
another one I unfortunately haven't caught yet, but I know everyone's screaming and raving about it. I'm waiting to get to it. But again, the MonsterVerse, big cool ass monsters are making a huge comeback, and you're gonna be writing the Mecha Godzilla, which I mean, I'm not a Godzilla expert or anything, but I mean, Mecha Godzilla is just so goddamn cool. And I mean, he's been cool in the original movie, in the recent one, he was awesome. So I got to ask again, kind of going back to these huge kind of characters and, with Spider-Man, what does it feel like writing Mecha Godzilla? And I'm assuming Godzilla is going to show up in this too. So Godzilla as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. Yeah, Godzilla's in there. It was really cool. Like it's the 50th anniversary of the
Hmm.
character. I think it's like the 70th anniversary of Godzilla, but the 50th of Mechagodzilla. So it was really interesting challenge because there have been a lot of different versions of Mechagodzilla over the years. Like, there was the original one, and then at a certain point he gets like upgrades, and then there was like Super Mechagodzilla and all
Hmm.
the stuff. And the really cool thing about working with Toho on it was that we kind of like they were very open to like using like the multiple versions. And what I was really trying to do was a story that really kind of gave a retrospective of like Mechagodzilla from the beginning all the way up to today. So I think like we weren't allowed to use the one that was actually like at the end of the Godzilla versus Kong movie, like that legendary universe or the MonsterVerse or whatever was off limits. But as far
Hmm.
as like all the original Godzilla movies, everything was fair game. So I was really trying to like tell this story that like really threaded everything together. Like so in the Mechagodzilla book that I wrote, basically like every version of Mechagodzilla is connected, along with like some other things that folks will recognize if they're fans of like old Godzilla movies. So it was really cool. And again, like it's just like a very cool like um just visually it's just so cool to be able to write like monsters like smashing cities and things
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, I had a great time writing it. It's just like it's a one shot out on May 1st. And again, just like a lot of fun to kind of take those toys out of the box and play with them for a little while.
Yeah, I've been on record many a time saying I love just two big ass monsters going
Mhm.
at it. You know, and like there's nothing funner than that. Even like with the kind of universal movies, right? Like some people will be like, "Oh, like this one wasn't so, or whatever," but I'm always just like, "We got two big ass monsters fighting each other." Like I am sold. So
Yeah.
I can't wait for this. And I love the description on this. It says an intrepid reporter profiles the history of Mechagodzilla and its creator before the launch of the newest model. So going back to talking about how you're kind of going through the
Yeah.
history of the Mechagodzilla, I think that's such a cool angle to kind of go at it, especially with it being the 50-year anniversary. And not to spoil anything, because I want everyone and myself to discover this fresh on May 1st. But I got to ask, so we know, I mean, it's a Godzilla book, Mecha Godzilla. So we know he's going off against Godzilla. But is, again, without spoiling too much, are there any other kaiju that we can expect popping up in this book? And do you have any really cool and new sort of weaponry or anything of that nature for Mecha Godzilla or this newest version of Mecha Godzilla?
Sure, sure. So I think yeah, Rodan is in there actually very briefly.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of ties into geez, I'm blanking on the name, but like but there's a version of Mechagodzilla that has this like kind of flying module that's separate, and then like they link up together.
Hmm.
Um, so Godzilla fans, please don't get angry at me for forgetting what that thing is called, but it's been a while since I actually wrote the script, but that's in there. It was just really cool, like the thing with the reporter kind of came about with like how am I going to tell this story of like spanning like decades, and I kind of like took a lot of inspiration from the movie Citizen Kane. So
Hmm.
it's like basically like this reporter going around like interviewing people who are like involved in the Mechagodzilla project like throughout the different years and things like that, and getting their different perspectives of what's behind this or what's behind that. And it was just like a lot of fun. But yeah, like you'll see yeah, just mainly like there's like the original Mechagodzilla, there's the Kiryu version, there's Super Mechagodzilla, and things are like a little bit different from the movies, like
Mhm.
but but the actual like models of Mechagodzilla, like I was just kind of trying to be like whoever is, if there's a fan out there and they have a favorite version of Mechagodzilla, I was gonna like do my best to like try to get it in there.
Yep,
So
fit them all in there. I love
yeah,
it, man. I love it. I cannot wait for it again. Anytime you got two big ass monsters fighting each other, I'm gonna be front row. Once
yep.
again, go run to your comic shop, tell them that you want it, and then. But Rich, before we get out of here, I have one more question for you. So typically, we like to ask people, what are they reading and watching that is, they're loving right now. And I just saw something you posted recently that I am also loving, so I wanted to ask you about it is Fallout. I saw you
Oh
posted
yeah.
about Fallout with Walton, our boy Walton Goggins, who we love here on this podcast. But how great is the show, man? I'm loving
Oh,
it.
it's
It's
so
so cool,
good.
right?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the games. Like I've played all of them, I think. Or I didn't play the multiplayer one, but like Fallout 3, New Vegas, Fallout 4, like I played all of them, loved them. I've always like really loved that kind of like the Fallout games have this like really delicate balance of like horror, action, and humor because it's like because
Mm-hmm.
things are like horrific, it's like the post-apocalypse, but there's also just this kind of like dark humor to it that I liked, and I was kind of like curious, like, is the show going to be able to nail that? Because that's like not the easiest thing to nail, and I think they totally did. Like,
Yeah.
there was just so many things in it that just made me like laugh and smile, while but it was also like a really like serious, and like really really good story. So, I just finished watching it like the last episode like last night, and I thought they did a great job.
Yeah,
And
I'm loving it.
I really hope there's a season two because they like not only set it up really well, like I can't wait to see it myself. So
Yeah, I'm loving it. I think I'm on episode 6, so I got 2 left. So I haven't seen
yeah.
the ending yet. But I mean, I played Fallout 4, which is funny because I feel like the discussion that I've been seeing online the last couple of days, people say that that's the worst one, but that's like the only one that I played. So I was like, oh shit, I guess that's the worst one. But I mean, I love 4, and I like you were saying, I think the show absolutely nailed the tone of like scary but also funny and like serious. And I mean, the performances I thought were just
Oh
outstanding.
yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
Walton Goggins, I love that dude. He's so good in everything. And the main girl too, I don't know her actual name, but she's from Yellow Jackets and
Mhm.
obviously now Fallout. But yeah, I thought she was great as like the Vault, and I love the Vault stuff too. Which
Oh yeah,
again,
the vault stuff is great. Yeah.
yeah, and like I've only played the one game, so I'm sure there's like a lot more of that like lore and history that I'm not aware of, but just like the interactions with them, like how they respond to things, I thought was just absolutely great.
Yeah. Yeah, really that's probably like my favorite like new discovery like show
Mhm.
wise like recently that like comes to mind like just really really enjoying it.
Awesome. And then, so for everyone out there, I want to hand it off to you really quickly before we get out of here. Like we talked about here, we got Drive Like Hell, we got Edge of the Spider Verse #2, we got HeartPiercer, we got Mecha Godzilla. Go to your comic shops, pick them up. Is there anything I'm forgetting? What else do we got cooking in the works for the people out there, Rich?
Oh yeah, I got a graphic novel coming out with Mad Cave in August called Phone Call Away. It's
Okay.
my first foray into just like a straight up crime story. Pretty
Oh,
excited about.
hell yeah. We
So
love
that
the shout out to people at Mad Cave too. We love the people at Mad Cave.
yeah, so that's going to be in August. So a little ways off.
Mhm.
And then I do have some other stuff coming out like later in the year that I think I'm really excited about. You guys will really be excited about that I cannot reveal yet. But
Well, we're
but
gonna have to circle back once those are
yeah,
announced and nerd out
definitely.
all about it.
Yeah, I got more stuff with Alex coming, got more stuff with
Yes.
like other people. So yeah, so there's gonna be a lot of like fun stuff coming out this year. And yeah, again, like if you wanna kind of keep on top of that, you can sign up for my newsletter on Substack. if you just like go to rduek .com, you'll see like a little sign up thing. I'm also on Twitter and Blue Sky stuff as at rduek, but again, like things have been getting very dramatic on social media, and I don't really like swimming into that. So I think like I'm trying to like pull away from that a little bit and focus on the newsletter, because I feel like just like I just like if I write a newsletter, I can get a little bit more in depth than I can like in a tweet. You know, like
Yeah.
I like to talk a lot about like the stuff like kind of stuff like we're talking about here. You know, like, what goes into decisions I make and what I'm working on, and you know, just like talking shop to like other creators and like things like that. So
Yeah, I love it. Everyone go follow Rich. Go sign up for the newsletter. I can guarantee you you're going to love it. This man's insight into comics, writing, horror is just unmatched. It's always such a pleasure having him come and nerd out with us. Again, Rich, thank you so much for coming. I will also be putting links in the description of this video for Rich's website, his recent books, and I will update it for once all these new books that we've been talking about come out. So keep a lookout for that. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please consider giving us a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Also, go over to bcwsupplies.com and use code Sons of Mjolnir for 10% off all of your bags, boards, everything you need to collect. We have you covered. Once again, that code is Sons of Mjolnir. Rich, again, thank you so much for coming nerding out with me today. It is always a pleasure, and it's been so much fun. Again, everyone, run to your comic shop. Tell them you want Drive Like Hell, Cyborg Spider-Man, and Edge of Spider-Verse #2, HeartPiercer, and Mechagodzilla. That's going to be all we have for you today. I hope you all stay hydrated. I hope your stacks are fat, and we will see you all next time.
I can do this all day.